Oh, good afternoon, everyone. It's time for our committee of the whole meeting. It's very close to 1 o'clock, so we'll call our meeting to order. Is there any declaration of interest, general nature thereof for council? There being none, we'll go on to our delegations and presentations. And first up, we have our local news Northumberland and John Miller. Is John here? Oh, there's John. And you're going to tell us a little about the local news sources. So, welcome, John.
Thank you very much. I appreciate. Thank you. Appreciate the chance to talk with you. I am a Hamilton Township resident, and I'm also speaking on behalf of a volunteer group of citizens from this and other communities, Port Hope and Cobourg among them. And we are concerned about the sustainability of local news in our community. And I wanted to tell you, as chief newsmakers of Hamilton Township, about our community consultations over the last 9 months and what we've learned and what we decided to do about it. I think our group includes former journalists such as myself and journalism educators. It originally included all of the journalists who were thrown out of work in our community, who had a long history of covering the community, and other concerned citizens who are just concerned about what might happen to democracy without a daily news source. So part of it involves you. So I just wanted to talk to you about what I believe was a crisis in local news, and it was a crisis because of the closure of Northumberland Today last November, which deprived us of a daily source of news. And that and other predecessors had served our communities for well over 150 years, and now it was gone. And the first, so we drew together out of concern. We didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't know what was going to replace it, but we wanted to be involved in helping that process, so to make sure we had a source of local news, a good source of local news. And the first reaction we had was that people don't miss it because they said that there wasn't a lot of local news in the paper at the end anyway. And it was interesting, it was largely true, because I did a study for Ryerson University where I actually measured the local news that had been in, I used the Port Hope Evening Guide as a comparison, and I measured the local news that was in that and compared it to the local news that was in Northumberland Today. And this study was about 6 months before the paper closed. And you can see from the chart that the amount of wire service news or syndicated material in the paper had greatly expanded to 75% of the content of the paper towards the end. Whereas in the old Evening Guide, it was basically just the horoscope and minor information. And what we lost was an editorial page, for instance, that used to have a daily local cartoon, daily local columnist, letters to the editor, and a local editorial. All that was gone. It was all syndicated material. And the circulation of the paper at the end was under 1,000. So people didn't miss it because the community had been robbed of local news by decisions made in Toronto or in the States. This was a post-media paper until the end. It wasn't just us that was suffering this. My colleagues at Ryerson have actually tracked the closures of daily newspapers, of community newspapers across Canada over the last few years. And they categorize each of those markers as a community that's lost a paper. And a lot of them are centered in Ontario. And I think they counted 244 papers that have gone out of business across Canada and in the last few years. And you can see from the rust-colored quadrant there, only a few papers that have sprung up, not newspapers, but online mostly, most of them local. So what we've lost has not been replaced by what's come along. And I think there are reasons for caring. Number one, this is an election year. People need a source of local news. Number two, we should be concerned about national chains owning most of our papers, because that means that the local community doesn't have a real say in what survives. The average turnout rate in local elections in Ontario last election was 44%, and that's been dropping for a number of years. I think it's higher in our local communities. We're very lucky, but it's not much higher. And I think those two things, the death of local news and the turnout rate, is connected. I could point you to academic studies that have shown a connection, a direct connection. So we decided to do community consultation. And what we've come out of it with was this profile of what's replaced Northumberland today. Number one, it's not in print, it's digital. A lot of it is in its infancy, so the journalism in all of these sites, it may not be up to the standards that we deserve, but at least they're out there. A lot of local people, they're all locally owned, they're all locally nurtured. They're very fragile because they depend on people supporting them at this stage so they can get better. And they're very hard to find. We identified 15 local news providers. There's a volunteer radio station, of course, and there's Northumberland News, which is still a newspaper. But the rest are all digital. And we live in a rural area, so not everybody has access to high-speed internet. We're working on that, and it's getting better, but not everybody has it. And so what we decided to do is we analyzed the situation and we made some findings. Some of you may be aware of the town hall meeting that we held in Cobourg last March. 160 people turned out from all our communities, and there was a strong feeling among those people that local news, provision of local news to people is essential for democracy. It promotes volunteerism, it promotes voting, good citizenship. And so we made a partnership with Loyalist College, which has an interest in this too. And so we, as I said, we identified 15 local news providers. And we said, okay, most of us are beyond our best before dates. We're retired people. There's only so much we can do. But what we can do is make it easy for people to find this. Not everybody's going to bookmark 15 local news sites every day and go searching for them. So we launched a signpost site, one site where you can get access to all of the daily news produced by these 15 outlets every weekday. It's updated every weekday. It's perfectly free. It'll always be free, and it will never have advertising on it. It's merely a public service to allow people to access local news. And it's called The Hub. And as I said, it's one-stop shopping. We don't we're well aware of some of the criticisms of journalism and opinion mixing with fact, and we only link to news stories that happened and that were posted that day. We don't link to opinion or editorials or anything like that. This is purely a service for people who want to know what's going on. And we are going to be continuing our mission because our group has two aims, really, is encouraging and supporting local news and educating the public about its importance. Because we were robbed of local news, a lot of people get out of the habit of seeking it out. So we're going to start consultations through libraries, senior citizens, service clubs. What we're hearing from some of the cultural groups is that since the demise of Northumberland Today, they're having a hard time publicizing their events, and they're suffering lower attendance. So we're going to be having workshops for those people as well, and how to get their postings out to this local media. And we would hope that you would find it in your interest to direct people to our site by putting a link on your website if you felt that was deserved. We're a non-commercial outfit. We're just doing it as volunteers. We don't have a budget to do that. We're going to be handing out some postcards to people, just saying what we're about. But having a link on your website would be very, very wonderful. And we're talking to all of the local councils in West Northumberland to make that request. So thank you for hearing me out. And if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Okay, questions, anyone? Pat, yes?
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. I think all of us have had concerns about how do we get the message out to people. My question specifically, though, is when somebody is doing a press release, like if there's something that we want to get out to the community at large, you're taking nothing directly so that it just gets out there, not connected to one of the 15 sites?
That's right. We're just pointing people to those sites and trying to drive people to those sites because they're receiving those press releases, and presumably they do a story about them.
Okay, that really was my biggest one. I did find it interesting. When I looked at my bookmarks, I have 3 sites that I have saved and 2 more that I check on occasionally. I didn't realize there was more than that. So the fact that there's 15 means that we still don't have the message out there enough where all these local places are. I think this is a great idea.
Thank you.
I think when he refers to 15, Pat, that's throughout the county, so that's maybe why some of them may not be of interest, so, because it'd be Brighton and Trent Hills and so forth.
Yeah, it's this broad area of West Northumberland.
Okay, Gary?
Yes. It's not campaigning or anything, but one of the questions I did receive on a survey that was done asking for questions was 2 of my pet peeves. My first answer was the lack of a daily newspaper within the area. I just have a question for you, John. How do you feel about approaching the provincial government and, sort of not demanding, but as they look at implementing a daily newspaper within, Northumberland County?
My career is as a journalist and also a journalism educator at Ryerson University. And so I'm well aware of all of the proposals that have been made, mostly at the federal level, for something like that. Funding for newspapers, funding for news sites, and so on. And they really haven't acted on it. I don't think the provincial government would be interested in providing any money. I mean, we've talked to Kim Rudd and the representatives of the province, but there's just no appetite there for it. I don't think it's a starter, because why would they do it for us and not for
other
elsewhere?
I guess my complaint is not really that, we do miss the news, the daily news that's going on here, but the bigger issue, one of the bigger issues I find is what's going on in the area. The events, we don't find out, we're not finding out now unless you know somebody that's putting it on, till after it's over. And there's got to be some better way. We can only, as a municipality, we can only do so much. We put on our website or on on our sign, but not all the people are picking that up all the time, so there's got to be a greater need of getting this across to people, and that's why I advocate that, I think we need to look at fresh, not just from the municipal level, but from the citizen level. Let's get out and, to do something here, to see if we can't do something more. I mean, the term fake news, I can see that down the road, and something, because online, all you're going to end up with is somebody putting the wrong story out there, and I have great concerns where that could end up. But
Yeah, and that's why we have this education role. It applies not only to groups that want to publicize things, but also to the media that are starting up.
And as far as the lack of local news when the papers were here, the understanding the story I get, or from what I was able to to see, was that the reason it got down is a lot of the newspapers here, it was funding and stuff, they were going to the local reporters and saying, you can have 8 hours this week for coverages and stuff, and that's why, to get good stories, it's hard, they got them, and then some of the times I understand they're getting them, and they didn't have a say as to whether they got published or not. It was, what's the bigger event going on, and that, it kind of hurts the rural area in a way, unless it's
Yeah,
a
it
good,
does.
thing, but anyway, no, I really appreciate you coming here, and I was not aware of this, and now it's something further to look at.
In answer to the first part of your question of where do you find out what's going on, there's actually a lot of these sites have their listings. Snapped, for instance, has a
Yes.
very good listing site, because they go out to those places. And so we list them on the side of our website. You can go and find events at probably about 10 of these sites. What I'd like to see is one central listing service, and that's one of the problems on our table that we have to address now that we've launched this site. It'd be really nice if I don't know how we do it, maybe the libraries would get together or something, but we need some resources there to centralize it.
Yes, thank you. Just one of the spin-offs, the things I was listening to you talk here is, the loss of income. The amount of young people that used to deliver newspapers, I for myself, that's not there anymore. And that was quite a business venture for a young person to get into, to have, maybe a paper route.
That's how I got my
How
start.
many of us had it? Like 200 papers delivered. You got to be accountable quite early for your money. That's kind of lost now, but I think that's a factor that, it's too bad. It's a sad shame.
Yep.
Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Okay, Bill?
Thank you. The question, or thank you for your presentation as well, John. My question is more of a general question, perhaps for you, Mr. Mayor, and for our CEO. Is there any way we can incorporate this into a declared emergency situation? We've been looking for. We realize one of the weaknesses is lack of being able to get the word out there.
And perhaps this may be, and maybe we'll have to do some research, I get staff to do some research on it. But yeah, that is a concern. I mean, if we have a state of emergency, where do people go to get the news? Because as you've mentioned, there's a number of sites, but a lot of people aren't even aware of those sites. If you were to ask, I hate to pick on my mom and dad, but if you were to ask mom and dad which site, where are they getting their news from, it's not on the computer. So unfortunately, they're getting it by word of mouth more than anywhere. So it's nice to have a site for that.
Well,
Direct people to?
that's why we did this, because if you go to the site, you can sign up for a newsletter. I mean, let's face it, everything is going to be digital, okay? That's the reality. But you can sign up for a newsletter so that you get this emailed to you every day, so you don't have to even bookmark it. It just turns up in your email. And the people who are just who are beginners at digital, most of them have email, so we're trying to reach out to the people who maybe not sophisticated enough to bookmark or to go to places to bookmark. This is one stop, and then they get linked directly to whatever site is producing a story they want to read. And then they're on that site and they can look around. They're not going to need this after a while, I hope, because we're not going to be able to continue it beyond a year. But we're hoping in that year we can drive enough people to these other, and that some of them, they won't all survive, but let's hope a lot of them do.
Yep, okay, fair enough. Pat, yes?
Sorry, I will be quick. What Bill was asking was where I was going to with, about media releases. I was thinking about emergency efforts. But I just pulled up your site while we were talking. I noticed you have the event section with an address for if you want to post an event. Would that be someplace where we could post public meetings?
Public meetings? Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Very good. I guess, the only thing I'm going to speak on, and very briefly, is the one thing I find that really has gotten lost with the paper is the kids' end of it. I mean, we don't have anything for sports and that type of thing. And even the reporting that goes on now by the reporters, unfortunately, they're being more lean and mean, and you're not seeing those good news stories. The sports stories for kids, the where they might be excelling in school or a course or whatever. Those are kind of gone. Those nice pictures, and the family end of it is unfortunately disappearing. So it's too bad.
It's a tragedy, you're right. Like the first thing, if somebody's looking for what life was like in Hamilton Township or Port Hope or Cobourg, 50 years ago, they go to the archives and look up the newspaper.
Yes.
And it's right there. You can find the prices of things.
Yeah.
You can find out what's going on. We're losing that.
Yeah. So we're really happy you came in. Glad, and hopefully we can use this. And I know we'll all take a look at it, that's for sure. And we'll get staff to investigate also, see how else we can do it. So,
Okay.
very good. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Shared Networks Canada. And I have down Leticia and Avance. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, that's my colleague. I'll be taking.
Okay. You'll have to introduce you. I only
Absolutely.
have her name down here, so, sorry. And you're going to be talking about two proposed
Yes.
communication towers, one on County Road 45 and one on Jib Road.
Yes.
So just,
My name is Dominic Claros. I'm here to propose, there's two proposed towers. We're here to propose to Honorable Mr. Mayor, Councilor, CAO, and Clerk. The first one is to help address the need for high-speed internet and cellular coverage in Camborne, and that would be SNC 0141, and that would be on Jib Road, just west of Camborne. And the second one would be on County Road 45, or Community Center Road, and just east of Baltimore. And these were both undertaken following Industry Canada's protocol. We notified the township of our intent to apply for the concurrence we're seeking for both of these towers. We then followed Industry Canada's protocol of notifying all residents within 3 times the height of the tower away from the tower. We held 2 open houses, one for each site, as requested by the township. And we also had a 30-day notice period in which any residents could comment, submit comments over the phone, by email, letter, and we also circulated 2 separate advertisements in the Northumberland News newspaper. And public consultation closed with no comments received from either. No residents came to either meeting, and we are now hoping to seek concurrence for both of these sites to bring needed cellular coverage and high-speed internet to these areas.
can I just ask a quick question? Where did you have your meetings, your public meetings?
The one for Baltimore was at the Baltimore Community Center, which is attached, which
Okay,
is, I believe, on Community Center Road. And the one for Camborne was on, it wasn't in Cam, it was just, pardon?
Cold Springs Hall.
Cold Springs, yes,
was
sorry.
that? Okay,
Thank you.
okay. And you had nobody attend?
Neither one.
Was there any invitation sent to each household or any household?
Yes, so for Baltimore, there was information packages with that information sent to 10 properties. And for Camborne, it was sent to 6
That's-
properties.
That's the ones that are listed then that you sent?
Yes, yeah,
people listed?
yeah.
Okay, very good. Any further questions on this? Scott, yes?
I believe I have numerous questions. Firstly, this information coming to us as council members is coming in our agenda package over the weekend. So it's new to us. In your letter of August 24th of 2018, you use a paragraph, I'm going to refer to it actually as paragraph 2, where it opens with, "We have contacted the planning coordinator, Sandra, in order to proceed." You close, or you finish that sentence, and the next sentence begins, "Once approved, we circulated the public notice." What approval are you speaking of when you use that terminology in that letter?
Just approval to proceed, not approval to establish anything. Just to proceed that we had contacted the municipality as a pre-consultation.
And that approval would have been issued by who at the municipality level?
It could be anyone. It could be a coordinator, a planner, CAO. Industry Canada just requires that we reach out to the municipality, and we have approval just to move forward with the process.
And in this particular case, who gave you that approval then?
I believe we had approval to begin public consultation with Sandra, I believe.
Well, I'm not terribly happy with the "I believe" in your response.
Yeah.
It's a process that I would have thought would have been before council. And we're hearing, like I say, about it for the first time over this weekend. In addition to that, our package does not include any mapping as to the actual site location of the tower. I have had an occasion to be on site of the 45 highway property. I exhausted my time and didn't get a chance to get to the other property, to be quite honest with you. I realize that 5195 45 highway is quite large in size. Where is this tower located? Yes, it's on that property, but where on the property is it located?
Yeah, so it's on the property near the west property line. It's about 65 meters in. The access road will come and it'll dogleg, so the tower will be concealed by a lot of the trees about halfway up.
And you're accessing it from 45 highway?
Yes.
So it's at the north limit of 5195B?
We're accessing it from Community Center Road.
Okay, I just asked you if you were accessing it from 45
Sorry,
highway.
yeah, no,
And
we're
you
act-
said yes, so
we're
I'm a little
accessing it-
confused.
We're accessing it from, the property spans both concessions.
Absolutely.
So we're accessing it from Community Center Road. Yeah, we're accessing it from Community Center Road, about 65 meters up on the westerly property line. That'll be our access. And it'll be 65 meters in from Community Center Road to the north, and then the tower will sit just east of the road, and so it's kind of a dogleg around, and so it'll be concealed by the trees.
So there will be no access required, no construction entry required from 45 highway?
No,
It'll
absolutely
all
not.
be restricted from the Community Center Road?
Yes, absolutely.
It'll all be within the property ownership of 5195B?
Yes.
The circulation that you were required to do, being, I believe, 3 times the height of the tower, is from the base of the tower or from the property limits?
The base of the tower.
Okay? We have, I believe, a protocol, a policy, where we expect proposed tower locators to look at other towers in the area. The objective there, of course, is to reduce or eliminate some towers which have visual impacts on many properties. How many other sites have you attempted to contact to cohabitate with?
So for both Baltimore and Camborne, there are no other sites to cohabitate with that would reach either township properly.
And you're basing that on?
The nearest towers, which aren't close enough to properly deliver service.
Okay, so what towers then are outside of that area? What was your research to establish the tower proximity to your site?
In order to deliver good coverage of high-speed internet and high-speed cellular service and data speeds, the tower needs to be, will deliver great coverage to about 2.5 kilometers. And so within the center of Baltimore, where you can reach the most people, and also Camborne, there were no towers within that range.
Are you familiar with a 400-foot tower located on Dale Road?
Yes, so that is an old bell tower that tries to reach Camborne, Precious Corners, and Baltimore. But now that technology is advancing in data speeds and cellular and high-speed internet needs to be a lot quicker, it needs to be a lot closer to the people. So that tower effectively doesn't help with either three of the sites.
Do you know the distance between that tower and the hub of Baltimore, the center of Baltimore?
I believe our planners did calculate it, and I believe it was over 2 kilometers away.
Well, I'm disappointed in the process that we've gotten to at this point in time. I am familiar with a property owner that's in the area of 5195. And matter of fact, I'm of the opinion that their address is probably 5197 or 5199, 45 Highway. They're as close to 5195 as you can be in that they border it. And I wonder if proper circulation to get the information out has taken place when in fact we as a council didn't know about it. And as we just indicated with our previous presentation, our newspaper coverage is minimal. And your circulation list is 165 feet from the base of the tower. How many people really had an opportunity to have input?
So it's 165 meters from the base of the tower. I believe the adjacent neighbor of 5195 County Road 45, does the property line reach Community Center Road?
No, it would, until not to my knowledge, it would border the north limit of 5195B.
Yeah, and so I believe the direct neighbors that would be within range of Community Center Road where the tower will be located were notified, but because the property is so large, the northerly neighbors weren't notified because they're far too far out of the area.
Now, the buffering that you've mentioned around the tower is natural vegetation, is that correct?
Yes.
How close to 165 meters in height is that vegetation?
It'll be outside the compound, so there's a compound that'll be about 15 by 15 meters, and that'll be fenced, and the vegetation will be within probably 3 meters of that. They might trim any trees that are within 3 meters so that the branches don't impede on the tower.
And actually, my question is, what is the height of that vegetation that we're going to be using for screening?
It's about 25 to 30 meters.
Okay. The only thing I might suggest, Mr. Mayor, is that we do have some public here that are adjacent to the community center tower property. They may have a question or may wish to make a presentation in future.
Okay, yeah, and unfortunately, they can't speak today, but they are more than welcome to come to our next meeting, or even, we could probably, even if council desires, since this may be a time issue thing, that we may allow it even at our beginning of our council meeting in a week's time, if council will allow that. Okay.
Thank you.
Pat, yes?
I was slightly confused by what you just said. Are you saying that they could ask to come to next week's council?
We'll ask at the end of today's session if that's, obviously we're all here from council, even though this is committee of adjustment meeting, but if I can get a consensus that they would allow public to speak at that particular meeting, then yeah, we could do that.
Okay, my question would be, though, since we're not in committee of adjustment, we're in committee of the whole, could we not have them speak today if we're all in agreement? I just-
Timing, the only bad part is they're not on the agenda, and there is not.
So other people might want to hear what they have to say.
Absolutely right.
There may be some opportunity for some preparation.
Yeah, it'd be a lot more fair to bring them next week to the council meeting, at the beginning of the council meeting, and then they're on the agenda and so forth. So they could contact the clerk and be added.
Fair enough.
Okay, I'm sorry, it is a committee meeting and, okay. Any further questions or comments on these? Scott's covered a lot. Bill, you have something you want to say?
Just that I get the same feeling as that Scott has alluded to. It just snuck up on me. I didn't know anything about it. I'm not sure where the breakdown of communication was, but it seems to me that members of council should be, FYI on these kinds of things so that we know what's going on. It's pretty embarrassing when members of the public know more about township business than we know. I find that embarrassing.
Really, and to get to that point, really this isn't a township business, this is more federal government business and their protocols and process that they outline. Yeah, absolutely.
So that was one of the issues that we ran into, is the township doesn't have a protocol, and so by default, we have to follow Industry Canada's protocol.
Yes.
And we did so by notifying the public, which is one of the reasons we notify the public first, send them the information packages and the newspaper ad, is to get their preliminary input. If multiple nearby residents who got the information packages thought that this was, they had comments or questions, or if anyone wanted to come out to the meetings, we would be more than happy to do so and entertain any of the input they had to look at any solutions that they may have.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we may have, and without a protocol, we may have failed some of the public that are here today. I mean, maybe that's something we're really going to have to look at and investigate and perhaps have in the future, because, I mean, it would be nice to have you come here first and do your presentation perhaps to council, to what your what you plan to do and so forth. And that way we would be able to perhaps even help in getting names and whom should be there and that kind of thing. So perhaps we failed a little too. Gary?
Yeah, because we've had this issue in the past. My understanding is that the obligations upon the municipality is to make sure that the public meeting is held and that any questions addressed were answered. So obviously, without our protocol, coming here first, unlike the rest of them, I had no knowledge of what was going on until I read this. So I think that, I hope you would entertain the thought of coming back next Tuesday. And, and if there are further questions, you'll be able to answer them for the public.
Sure, yeah.
And we'll advertise that, well, I'll wait, but I'll.
Sure, we'll put that on our agenda. If council, and maybe I can get consensus of council now, and I think everyone's in favor of having an open time for public at the beginning of the meeting? Yes, yeah. So we'll go ahead with that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
If I might suggest to our presenter, a great number of times when the public become involved, they're quite interested on buffering, and they're quite interested on illumination requirements and the type of lights and what they will be on the tower. So if you are back, I would suggest that you might be able to field some of those questions.
Absolutely.
And what would be helpful for us too is a map showing where it is on the property and so forth, so that we have a pretty good idea of where it is.
Sure, yeah,
And
absolutely.
then we can also investigate ahead of the meeting.
Mhm.
Okay, good. Any other comments or questions? No? Well, thank you for coming in, and I know you were asked a lot of questions today, but, we want to be transparent with our public too, so.
Absolutely.
Good.
And so should I come back next Tuesday, or how? will we
If
move
you,
forward from-
let's see and it'll depend on what the clerk gets as far as whom wants to come as a delegation. If we get delegations, then yes, we'd like you to come. If no one wants to speak on this topic, then I guess you'll get the same, you'll have basically the same response that you've already had, which is none. So
Okay.
nothing to comment on.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you very much for
Great.
your time, everyone.
thank you. Okay, so there's no closed session, so can I have a motion to adjourn our committee of the whole? Pat and Gary, all in favor? And that's carried.